Welcome to Module 1 of our Managing Talent and Culture, Leadership, Engagement, and Performance class. Dr. Jen Crenshaw, and excited to do this module with you today. All right, so we're going to talk about psychological safety, one of my favorite topics in this course. I definitely start with it because it is, in fact, foundational. Love this quote. I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters to create many ripples. Of course, Mother Teresa. So, look, your opportunity to impact the psychological safety of those who you lead, you may say won't change the world, but it certainly will create ripples that could have a very positive effect. And so I hope that you'll find the information regarding psychological safety to be challenging and engaging. Many of you have probably already studied psychological safety and you know a lot about it. I hope that today is more than just a review for you. But if these concepts are new, I hope that this sparks a love for the topic and that you'll dive deeper. People flourish when they're participating in a cooperative system with high psychological safety. This comes from our author, Timothy Clark. And I think that you'll find that he does a great job of giving us practical steps that we can take to really create that cooperative system where people can flourish. So, a little bit of history of psychological safety that I wanted to share with all of you. So, as far back in the research as 1965, we see that Shine and Bennis really started talking about, you know, people's anxiety for wanting to be accepted and to be thought worthwhile. These are not new concepts. I also don't believe that we just started to see this significance in the 60s either. I think you can go much further back in philosophy, the ancient Greeks and Romans, and really understand a man and woman's journey for understanding their purpose and their worthwhile and their significance. Certainly, Shine and Bennis started to write about it as it relates specifically to industrial relations. And then, speaking of industrial relations, Deming, one of the fathers of the industrial relations movement, right, in his 14 points in 1986, raised the point of reducing fear and interpersonal risk as a time when you can then most effectively drive productivity. And Deming was known for his writings around productivity during the industrial era. 1990, Kahn wrote about the sense of being able to show and employ oneself without fear of negative consequences. And then a video that I hope you guys all have already watched. Dr. Amy Edmondson she was doing a study in hospitals on errors made in patient care. And she really had a belief that she would find that there was a need to change the way the medical staff was communicating with one another. And ultimately, she really stumbled across this whole idea of psychological safety, right? And so she wrote, the belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes, and that the team is safe for interpersonal risk taking. That is her definition of what is psychological safety, right? And so a belief that you won't be punished, right? That you're psychologically safe from bringing up questions, concerns, and, certainly specifically in her study, looking at errors in patient care, the ability to say, hey, I found a mistake, whether it's your own mistake or the mistake of a coworker. Really important, obviously, in the medical setting. All right. So let's take a look at some of what Timothy Clark wrote in his book, The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety. I'll just say quickly, why did I pick this book, right? I picked this book because I do, in fact, find it to be incredibly practical. And I start there by saying, pretty much, like I'm a product of, my doctorate in business administration, and you got to love a 2x2, right? So the 2x2 here, when we look at like how the respect and permission, right, that is given to the team that you're leading. So are you showing a sense of respect for the individual? Are you giving them permission to make decisions and then ultimately to try new things and potentially to make mistakes without threat of consequence? And so in the four stages, Clark looks at here this 2 by 2, right? Like how much respect, how much permission. And we'll talk about these four stages today. The first stage of inclusion safety and what that means, learner, contributor, and then finally that challenger safety, right? The safety to challenge and what Dr. Amy Edmondson was talking about when she said, right, is there safety in saying we think we got this wrong or we think we should do it a different way? You'll see here, right, these kind of two troughs on either side, right? The paternalism, if there is that lack of permission. So varying degree of respect inside paternalism, but really that lack of permission to take action, right? Really that everything has to go through that hierarchy. Everything has to go through that leader. Um, really falls into that, and then or on the downside there, the exploitation. So plenty of permission given, like yeah, go ahead, right, but I may or may not respect what you're doing. And so seen in that way as being exploitative of the person's knowledge, skills, and abilities to get the job done, even if they're not respected to do that. Okay, so let's dive in a little bit, right? So I really like this chart that Clark provided to us, right? When you're looking at each of the stages, right? This first inclusion safety, when we're thinking about the 2 by 2 here, the respect and the permission, right? In inclusion safety, it's really that respect for the individual's humanity. It's that baseline respect, right? I respect your flesh and blood, right? Your right to be here as a person. Not much deeper than that in inclusion safety. Certainly that, like, come on in, like you're a part of the team and we respect you as such. And then that permission, right? Early stages here, right? It's permission for the individual to interact with you on that human being level, right? Like I give you permission to be here, to be part of the team. The social exchange here involved, right, is that exchange for the human status, an absence from harm, right? Like think about it as, if we think about it in the workplace, this is that job offer, right? I respect you as the person who's going to come in and be a part of this team, right? So you are invited in. I definitely am, showing you that respect and giving you permission to show up and act as a part of the team. Then we advance up that curve, right, into learner safety. Respect for that individual's innate need to learn and grow. Now we're going to start to teach you the job. Again, remember, think about this as somebody's entering into the organization. So now they're here, they're on the team, and now we're going to respect them as somebody who's here to learn and grow. Giving them permission to engage in all aspects of the process, right? To ask questions, to make mistakes, to really engage, right? Encouragement in exchange for engagement. I'm going to ask you what you think. I'm going to expect you to be an active learner in the process. Then, right, again, taking it back to that, like taking you through the process of, like, you've onboarded, you've made it through your training, and now you're a contributor, right? You're somebody who's given the respect of the individual ability and value that you create. You're no longer, in the training class. You're now actually out contributing to the success of the team. And then that permission extended to the individual work, independence, and your own judgment, right? And so that social exchange now is autonomy with guidance in exchange for results. So still managing you, we're still getting together, you're still, asking questions. I might still, at times guide your behaviors. But for the most part, I'm really looking for you to come up with the solutions, right? I'm not looking for you to come to me and say, hey, what do you want me to do? Or what should I do? Which might have happened in that learner stage. But now in the contributor stage, I'm really looking for you to come to me and say, Here's what I expect, or here's what I think we should do. And then we enter that challenger safety, right? That pinnacle of like, this is the most respect given, the greatest level of permission given. And this is where, innovation really shows up, right? Now, like the respect that you're given, that you are not even just contributing, and we'll talk a little bit later around, the areas of accountability, task, process, and then outcomes, right? This challenger safety really kind of gets to that like outcome level of accountability, right? I'm not just expecting you to perform on a task or even just follow a process. I'm really looking for you to think about like, are there better ways that we can get these outcomes and really be innovative? The permissions coming in at that individual challenge for the status quo, right? Again, you're not just doing a task as it's detailed in a manual. You're not just following a process, but now you're also like really challenging the status quo and really applying what more, outside of just task and process work. And here, the social exchange is really, cover in exchange for candor. What does that mean? Cover in exchange for candor. Right now, it's like, look, just go try something. I've got you. I've got your back. If it succeeds, we succeed and you get the credit for that. If it fails, I've got your back. Yeah, we'll have to take ownership for it, right? We can't shy away from our mistakes. But also, right, I've got you, right? There's not going to be, it's not detrimental to fail, right? It's failing our way to learning in that case. And that candor comes in. So hopefully this helps with the understanding of like how we think about this 2x2, the respect and the permission. All right. So a little bit more about inclusion safety, right? There's a lot of material here. I know this class is really busy. I know I've asked you to read a lot. I do hope that you will take the time maybe to look up this Timothy Clark book and make it a part of your management library, because I do think that you will find it incredibly beneficial. So inclusion safety, right? Let's dive in on that for a second. The need to be accepted precedes the need to be heard. Being ignored is often as painful as being rejected, right? So having someone come right out and say, we don't want you on the team, certainly hurtful. But if you are on the team and you're not being heard, or you're being ignored, right? It really is as hurtful as not having been asked to join the team at all. And so as leaders, we really need to think about the environment that we're setting up in these early stages when we invite somebody to be on the team, right? That we are actively making them a part of the group. Rarely does this happen without intention. And so I call this out to you guys as leaders to make sure that you're really thinking about, what does that onboarding process look like? When you have somebody new on the team, you don't have to be an HR to be, mindful about what somebody's onboarding experience looks like, right? You see somebody new in the workforce, whether it's directly on your team or you just, bump into them in a meeting, right? I'd say in the hallway, but many of us are in hybrid environments. So you see somebody new in a meeting, take a minute to chat them in a direct message, just to say hi, just to welcome them, right? Just to show them that they are being accepted into the team, because it will make a difference. All right. Look, our choice to include other human beings activates our humanity. I'll talk a little bit throughout this class about the organization that I work for now called Grouper. I talked a little bit about them in my introduction, but look, we are in the human connection business, right? We truly know that the studies say that people who have meaningful relationships in their life, people who are connected, are more likely to stay healthy and live longer lives. And I think everything here about psychological safety proves that out to be true as well. So, we know that we include naturally in childhood and that we learn to exclude later in life, right? When you think about children, they play with the children that want to play with them, right? It is not until they're taught differently that they start to see differences, like whether it be physical differences, skin color, eye color, whether it be disabilities or, yes, they may recognize that a child has a slightly different style than theirs, say, a child that is on, the autism spectrum, but it doesn't matter to them, right? They still include that person. They don't think to exclude them. It's not until later that we learn more about exclusion, sadly. Um, all right, our ability to reach unity and diversity will be the beauty and the test of our civilization, of course, Mahatma Gandhi, right? And so just thinking about this idea of inclusion safety, right? Each and every one of us has the opportunity to make other people feel included. On this point, I always like to say, like, go first, right? And what I mean by go first, right? We each want to feel included, and oftentimes we don't. And so, right, step outside yourself and be the first one to reach out, right? If you're specifically not feeling included, take that step to make somebody else feel included, right? Find that person on the team who seems to also be on the fringe and make them feel included. And very soon you will have a team and you will forget that you were feeling excluded because now you're the one doing the inclusion. All right. In a social unit, inclusion safety can be granted, withheld, revoked, partially or conditionally granted, right? So it's really, I mean, I don't know how often we stop and think about the power of inclusion, right? Again, going back to that 2 by 2, the respect and the permission, right? Really thinking about what is that sense of respect that you are granting to others? And what is that permission that you're giving them to be a part of the discussion? If you are a leader and you are welcoming a new team member into the group, right? Like really, getting to know them a little bit and finding out like what does it take to let them in on the discussion? Can you ask them to be a part of the All right. In the event that somebody is excluded, it's more often a result of personal unmet needs and insecurities, right? So kind of check your insecurities at the door, right? All right. Hang drywall, make a sandwich, um, answer a phone call using a script, right? Whether it is that kind of specific skill or whether you are orienting them to the company, teaching them the mission, vision, and values of the company, right? No one ever responds well to harsh criticism, right? So really thinking about what does our training program look like and what kind of encouragement are we offering? The true definition of devastation is no one caring when you fail, right? So at the same time, right, the learning environment needs to be encouraging, but it should not be to never show someone that they are making mistakes. You want to catch those mistakes in the learning environment. You want to show them that you care enough to show them the right way to do things in the learning environment so that they have a sense of safety, right? That they tried something, maybe it didn't work, maybe they didn't do it just right, but you cared enough to point it out to them and they were able to fix it. Real learning comes about when the competitive spirit has ceased, right? That when learning isn't about competing with other people, it's just about wanting to do well and succeed, that's when real learning can happen. All right. The moral imperative to grant learner safety is to act first by encouraging the learner to learn. Be the first mover. And I just said this a few minutes ago, right? Like go first. Go first in setting these in making this environment one that people want to learn in. Failure isn't the exception, right? It's the expectation and the way to move forward. If we set that type of environment when we are learning something new, right? When we say it's not that we think we won't fail, right? In fact, we know we will fail. I work in a startup situation right now, right? We are literally designing this product as we go, right? We are literally coming up with a new way to go out to the 65 plus community and offer ways that they can connect among people with similar interests to them. We know that we're not going to get it right every time. We know that sometimes we're going to fail. We've failed a lot in the year that I've been here. But we also see failure as learning opportunities, and we've also made just a ton of improvements at the same time. So I want to be mindful of our time. I know you don't want this session to drone on, and so I will move us into contributor safety. As the individual demonstrates competence, the organization normally grants more autonomy to contribute. Remember again, moving up that scale, right? As more respect for what the person contributes comes into play, then there's greater permission to do more and more. Organizations engage in only two processes. This is so important to get. This is one of my favorite points in this whole session, right? Two processes. Organizations execute and they innovate. Execution is that like detail oriented, process oriented, being very strict, taking few risks, really wanting to just like drive out variance, right? Execution does not want variability. And then there's innovation, right? Innovation is just the opposite of that, right? It's creative. It is looking for variance. It is looking for new ways of doing things, right? Execution is the creation and delivery of value today. Innovation is the creation and delivery of value tomorrow. And I think we can agree that organizations need both to be successful and to survive. Again, I can tell you working in a startup, this tension is alive every day in every meeting. We have our operations team that's trying to drive out variability, trying to put processes in place to make sure that we are consistent and that we are doing things the same way. And then we have our product teams who are innovating, our tech teams who are innovating, and just the process involved there. Tension every day. I'm grateful to say that in an organization where we do have a lot of respect for each other, people do have permission to make mistakes. And so this tension is a positive tension. We are all very committed and mission driven and respectful of one another, but tension nonetheless. All right. So inside innovation, right? This can be like where we look to find the common enemy as an organization to really band together, right? To look for how do we innovate? Execution is one thing. Yes, we can execute on reliable process, but then we have to think about like where do we look for ways to improve? And these ways for improvement really are around defensive innovation, right? When something is changing in the environment and we have to defend against that, a threat, a crisis, right? That's when we have to, in order to stay nimble and to really be able to stay ahead of the competition, we sometimes have to have defensive innovation versus offensive innovation, right? Where we are able to take advantage of opportunities. This is very proactive, and whereas that defensive is, as you might gather, reactive. Okay, so when you're competent and willing to hold yourself accountable, you're ready to receive contributor safety. So if you're really thinking about like your own career and like wanting to be allowed to get out of that learner mode, right? And have less, some people talk about, they feel like their managers still micromanage them, right? Well, how do you get away from that, right? It is that, showing yourself to be competent, willing to hold yourself accountable. That's when you really find that contributor safety. I mentioned a few minutes ago about three different ideas or three different ways or levels of accountability, I should say, right? And that's being accountable to the task, specific tasks that you're supposed to do, and you're accountable to do that. Being accountable to the process and then to the outcome, right? We think about raising children, right? We might say, can we send our child in for the task of brushing their teeth, right? And then there's the process, right? When do we start to trust our child to own the process of getting ready for bed at night, right? Brush their teeth, wash their face, put their own pajamas on, right? So that you send them upstairs and say, go get ready for bed. And they follow the process versus just sending them upstairs to brush their teeth, right? And then you come in to say, okay, now put on your pajamas, right? So on and so you, and then, right, the outcomes, right? Like, are you managing, less on task, less on process, and now you're managing the outcome of, when you're ready to send them off to college, and it's the outcomes of like you know that they can care for themselves, right? They are going to choose wise bedtimes or not, but they're at least accountable for those bedtimes. And they do those things to, brush their teeth, wash their face, shower, so on and so forth, right? So those three levels of accountability, and we can see them in the work world as well. All right. We know that toxic environments can shut down performance, right? Because people start to worry about their own psychological safety. This really happens heavily in this contributor phase, right? People are no longer just in that inclusion phase or that learning phase where people really tend to show a lot of time and attention and care. You've moved into this contributor phase, and you're often being asked to contribute independently, but are you given the safe environment to do so? And this is really where those toxic environments can hurt the most. And so, right, are you the kind of leader who is asking more questions versus just giving instructions or telling more, right? So I would ask you to kind of start paying attention to the way you interact with those you lead. When you meet with your team one on one, are you telling or are you asking? Right? And I would encourage you, ask more, tell less. And this will start to communicate to those that you lead that you are both showing them respect, that you believe they have the answers versus because you are asking versus telling, and also giving them permission to try, right? Maybe sometimes you're asking them questions they don't know the answer to, and that's okay, but you want them to try, and you're showing them that you're willing to give them that permission. It's the leader's job to recognize the difference between dissenting and derailing behaviors and to manage the boundary between the two. Just because somebody on your team is speaking up and has a dissenting opinion does not mean that they intend to derail. And it's really important that you get really good at discerning between dissent and derail. And that when something is headed toward derailment, you take control of that and you get it back on track, literally, versus when somebody is bringing up a dissenting opinion, that you really do allow that to happen and you really do explore why they're seeing it the way they're seeing it and how can it be beneficial to the team. All right, challenger safety. And I know that this video has gotten longer than I had intended, but I remember doing this presentation on ground, and it took more time there as well. I hope you guys are enjoying the material. So in challenger safety, right, there's no this is a quote from Clark, right? Where there's no tolerance for candor, there's no constructive dissent. Where there's no constructive dissent, there's no innovation. If you want to kill innovation, kill dissent. You guys know that, right? You know that there cannot be innovation if people can't say, hey, We think there are better ways to do this. All right. Challenger safety democratizes innovation. When it comes to innovation, connectivity increases productivity, right? You want lots of opportunities to have discussions, lots of opportunities to, throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. Lots of opportunities to, people say, play devil's advocate, right? But like really like let's throw out ideas and then let's see what works and like let's really work through it in a democratized way. To socialize a team with challenger safety from the beginning is always easier than to re-socialize. Once a team has kind of learned to like be careful, to stand back, to filter their dissent, it's very difficult to get them to open up later. And so, I would just say if you are right now thinking about you want to have more challenger safety on the team that you lead, I would encourage you, please do strive for that, right? It's beneficial to everyone, especially the company as it relates to innovation. It's beneficial to each member of the team to feel that sense of trust and to feel that sense of permission. Just know it's not going to be easy, right? That it's easier to start a team in that trust and with that candor than it is to change it later, but it's worth it. In the process of innovation, there is no necessary relationship between stress and fear, right? You don't have to have a fear that you may fail when you have a truly innovative culture because you've already accepted it. You already know that you will at times fail, and that's okay. Asking questions introduces personal risk. If when you ask what I challenged you earlier just a couple of minutes ago, right? To ask more questions. Tell less, ask more. I understand that introduces risk, right? But I encourage you to do it anyways, right? If you deprive your team of challenger safety, you unknowingly dedicate the team to the status quo. If you want your team to continue to grow, to innovate, to think differently, then you have to be willing to show that utmost respect and give that total permission to take chances, ask questions, try things. All right. So, wanted to show you the process of inquiry, right? This is the way I would recommend running a team when you want to be a challenger safety type of environment where innovation can flourish. You ask questions, you collect the data, you look for and recognize the patterns. You come to some conclusions, you make the decision, and then you start over and you just keep going, right? All right. So we looked at this at the beginning. This is kind of our conclusion and our wrap up here, right? Just a reminder of these different levels of safety, right? This inclusion safety. Remembering our graph, right, where this is the lowest level of respect that you can give someone, the lowest level of permission. I'm literally respecting you as another human. I'm giving you permission to be present and contribute. The social exchange here is the exchange of human status and the absence from harm, right? You're welcome here. No harm will come to you. Then there's that learner safety, right? Where both respect and permission start to increase. And now there's an encouragement in exchange for engagement, right? I'm going to encourage you to learn. I'm going to encourage you to take chances. And because of that encouragement, you're going to engage and you're going to take on this new challenge. Increasing ever more, both in respect and permission, the contributor safety starts to give autonomy with guidance in exchange for results, right? This is where you start to really see the performance. And then that challenger safety, that place where innovation can happen, that place where organizations can be, rocket launch, right? Again, the highest level of respect, the highest level of permission. This is where that, like, both in contributor safety and challenger safety, that accountability that each individual has to take for task, for process, and for outcome. In this challenger safety phase, right, this is where you give cover in exchange for candor. The people on your team are committed to being candid, giving you feedback, telling you when they think that something is off track. And in exchange for that, you give them cover for making mistakes, for trying, for innovating. All right. That wraps us up for this topic. I really do hope that you will consider going and reading The Four Stages of Psychological Safety by Timothy Clark. I think you will find it to be a really great read. I certainly did, and find it to be incredibly practical. Again, I use these concepts in my work with executive teams that I lead every day. And so thank you for taking time to watch this video, and look forward to being back with additional materials soon.